Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond Body podcast. Mil, we're back for another episode. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm very jealous of your double-digit temperature up there.
I know. Mil just asked me before we came on. She's like, hey, is it cold up there? I was like, yeah. I mean, no, my final answer is no, it's not cold. It's 20 degrees.
She's like, wearing black shorts. I'm like, so we'll start the episode. Let's just stop talking about this.
So, Mil, what's been highlight, low light of life recently?
Highlight and lowlight have been a bit enmeshed, and you and I had a phone chat the other night about this. I have taken a bit of a break from social media.
Yeah.
Like a proper break, which I have talked about doing for so long or had attempts at it before. And I'm coming to like almost 2 weeks of a break, which has been phenomenal. It's been great. So it was a low light just because like there's a lot of noise that comes at me, and in the last year more than ever with TikTok kind of like 150,000 people there now, which is nothing I ever wanted. I always really liked my medium-sized following. It felt like I could actually be a bit more impactful because I could have this more like intimate interaction with people. But it's been really positive because it's really given me, I think really for the first time, the first chance to ever intentionally map out how do I want to show up now versus like just what am I used to doing and how am I used to operating in that space. And because there's just some really lovely, wonderful opportunities and life things that are happening where it's like, what am I doing? I don't need to live at a 10 out of 10, stress level just because I think that it's the right thing to do. It's like I actually get to decide what I put my hand up for and when I put my hand up for it, which is just what you've been telling me for the last 3-4 years, and Josie and Mum and anyone who has ever watched how I operate. So it's been a bit of a mesh, but ultimately I would say highlight.
And I think what you're talking about here is something that so many people have to face in their life, right? Particularly because you are and it's one of your most of many remarkable qualities. You are so passionate about so many things that matter and you care so much. But of course, when you have a platform like this, like sometimes that can be a detriment to you because you can't be 100% on caring, giving it all, advocating at every moment.
And not at the sacrifice of your life.
Yeah,
recently there's been some amazing things that have come into my life. And I was actually watching this calculation of like, if I keep doing this, I don't get to have all this lovely, wonderful stuff. And so something has to give, and I finally have to give some of that energy to myself, like I've had a good few years of, getting into like sort of a lovely part of my life. And it's like, now can I enjoy it? Is that okay?
Oh my gosh, yes. Please enjoy it. Please enjoy it. Put your feet up. You turn that inbox off and you put your feet up.
That's the plan. What about for you, love? Highlight, low light?
I'm just in such how do I describe this? There is so much movement in my life, both like in every area of my life. I think things are changing.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's a full moon, not sure what's going on. I think everyone I've been speaking to as well are going through like significant things. People are having babies, people getting married. I'm actually moving house today. So I actually am genuinely a headless chicken today. Surprise, surprise.
I don't know why I'd be doing a pod recording the day I'm moving.
But yeah, just really between a lot of things, like, when and I feel like everyone listening to this podcast would probably relate to it, like you're not necessarily where you want to be yet, but you're no longer where you were, and just sitting in those in-between states. And even with making big decisions about relationships in my life, who's coming with me, and because who is worthy of having me in their life, and just being really considered with my decisions. Obviously I'm headless chicken today, but overall considered chicken. I'm being a considered chicken. So I'm really good. There's just so much change happening in my life, but rolling with the punches and absolutely, always supporting myself through like any storm that comes up. I think we're being incredibly vague, but I feel like everyone's going to get what we're saying.
I know. It's like we both know what we're talking about, but the message,
read between the lines, people.
yeah. And look, transitions are so hard, even if life is like life, there are wonderful transitions happening for me at the moment. And that comes with uncertainty. Like even,
Yes.
but I was saying to somebody recently, like if there is no fear, it's not important to you. And
Oh, love that.
I think so often, and we're going to get into that with today's topic, because this is actually a phenomenal suggestion from you. And it's one of the biggest responses we had from people was you emailed me and said, can we do an episode where we do like fears after recovery? What is going to happen to people after this process and what that's going to look like? And the response, this is clearly so needed because the response was huge. And that's just all unknowns. Even if it's like there were positive things people were anticipating and are still afraid of, because it's just different. We fear the unfamiliar, even if it's this thing we could imagine. If my life was everything I could ever dream of tomorrow, I'd go to bed anxious because I'd be like, oh, what's that going to be like?
Exactly. And this is something that everyone's going to have to deal with at so many different phases of their life. I even, reflect back 2 years ago. I think I've said this before on the podcast. Like I was so nervous in the first like bunch of podcasts, like so stressed. It was such a big fear. And then to be like, literally walked into this podcast, finished a call 5 minutes ago. I was like, cool, ready to do it. Let's go, But that just comes from practicing the hard thing. And there's always going to be fear and there's always going to be uncertainty about the future. But what you can know for certain is that you actually can back yourself, and you've got the skills and the tools and the resilience to know that if this is an absolute flop, like I'm good, I'm going to be okay.
We'll do another.
Yeah, totally. And I think, we say all the time, you're scared, cool, let's go directly towards the thing you're scared of.
Yeah, it's one of my life mantras is you have to care more than you're scared, which is I think like the core of recovery, which is like you care more about where you're going to be in 10 years than you're scared of not doing the eating disorder self thing right now.
Oh my God, I love that. I love that. Great segue into the start of this episode. So the first, which I think this is a very interesting one, the first one that was sent through, which so many people have said, and these are fears after recovery, that I won't be able to make health changes without relapsing. So interesting. I think, Mill, you could probably speak to this through a bit of an endo lens.
Totally, yes. And also just through the lens of something I'm really passionate about, which is teaching people that they have individual health profiles, right? Like you as an individual with someone with an eating disorder history or with whatever your physical makeup is, your genetic makeup, we've all got this individual health profile that is way more complicated than diet culture would have us think. A lot of like the medical industry would even have us think. But certainly through the lens of my endo, it is, I think that this is one of those, and this will probably come up a lot in a few of our answers, which is that when you get to the end of this process, a lot of these fears and anxieties you will have learned that they're not really worth holding on to anymore.
Yes.
Because when I was diagnosed with endo, I had probably been recovered for a couple of years, and I had all kinds of things suggested to me, including elimination diets and anti-inflammatory diets and movement and things that just didn't feel right or aligned to how I protect myself and how I wanted to navigate my life in the world with what I'd been through and with what I know my sensitivities and vulnerabilities are. As I said in a previous episode, I am very, very confident in my full recovery, but I also am not going to go ripping things out of my intake.
Oh, absolutely.
Certainly not without close supervision and monitoring.
Yes.
So I understand this fear, but also have such a forensic understanding of your vulnerabilities and your sensitivities. And I think the other thing you learn in recovery is how to resource yourself properly.
Yes.
We do see people and we support people who aren't experiencing this even after recovery. They're experiencing this through recovery. They're being diagnosed with things like intolerances or allergies or autoimmune conditions or chronic illnesses, and we are supporting them through it as they're having to make these adjustments. Like somebody who might find out they're gluten intolerant as we're working through this process. Okay, then we just make some adjustments which support your recovery and also support your individual health profile. So I think you actually will have so much knowledge through this process that you can confidently navigate both and realize that they have to be in harmony. It's not one or the other.
Exactly. I think you're to piggyback off what you're saying there, it's like you're just expanding this, because I think this fear, it's pretty suggestive that health changes are about restriction as well, and they absolutely don't have to be. I've had phases since being recovered where like my physical health has been better than others. It's like naturally this is something we're all going to go through where, maybe we're caring for ourselves a little bit better than other times, or like we're just struggling with something that's out of our control. And when I have had the desire to change my physical health, coming from, like you're saying, like this has been my emotional history, my intention is so loving, right? And it's always bringing like more intention to the little ways that I could support my body, my energy, my vitality, my sleep, like whatever it might be. I think it's really important for people to not assume that physical health changes have to equate to relapse, because they absolutely don't. And like you're saying, if you have done the work to get your recovery into a solid place and you are being guided with professional support, health changes are so incredibly possible and a lot of the time really necessary. And relapse does not even have to come into the conversation there. I think if someone is thinking, they've taken the advice of, I don't know, a random GP, right? And it's like, we could probably lose some weight to do this. And you don't necessarily have that healthy self hat on, and you don't have the awareness of, I really need to take this information with a grain of salt, because there is still so much fat phobia. There is still so much body shaming, and a lot of people who are not on board with the idea of health at every size as well, to really understand what is going to be the best move for me moving forwards. Because realistically, if you're taking on the advice that I need to lose weight, and it's coming from a medical professional, and you're not being open about your own history, I'm going to say that those intentions are not pure.
Yes. Yeah, they're not healthy, self-aligned.
Yeah.
I've had doctors recommend to me intermittent fasting, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't do that. I have a history of an eating disorder." And they're like, "Oh, you can't?" And I'm like, "No, I can't."
Write that down.
Yeah. And if anybody else says that this needs to be your response. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's also understanding the nuance of who you're sitting in front of, and not just assuming that because they have this degree of incredibly important knowledge and experience that also intersects with them being sensitive to your specific eating disorder history, which speaks again to individual health profile. We actually had this conversation with a couple of clients this week. There are just certain things that you will hear or see, and you just know that doesn't apply to me. That just is not for me because of something in my individual health profile, like an eating disorder, right? Like there are things that you're going to see or hear that someone else could try, but you're just like, that's just not for me. It's just like, it's like I'm allergic to it. I just don't even need to look at it.
Yes. And it also really speaks to having to advocate for yourself, find your voice, trust yourself, as opposed to that external confirmation of, oh, but this someone else did this, or but they said this. It's like, okay, this is what so much of this journey is about, is really figuring out, okay, this is what is right for me, but then being able to take that independence and be like, and therefore this is the decision that I am going to make.
Yes, absolutely. Next one was obviously very, very common and comes up more often than not. So the next fear for after recovery, that I'll always hate and be uncomfortable in my body.
I bet this one came through thousands of times. I think, of course, this is so common and such a valid fear. But the reality is, look, you can't see into the future, and neither can we. So we cannot, for absolute certain, determine how your future self is going to feel about itself. But what we do know is that right now, you likely hate or are uncomfortable in your body. And that may be a product of the process of recovery, but that is only a byproduct of having an eating disorder in the first place, right? So I think first things first, don't blame recovery for hating your body. I think when you're living in the vortex that is an eating disorder, even if you had phases, right, where maybe you didn't hate your body, you would have still always been living in fear of losing that body, right? So I'm not classifying that as love or even anything close to it, right? But what the process of recovery is giving you, that having an eating disorder does not give you, is this development of skills to be able to handle discomfort, and the awareness and insight that your body is so much more than its physical form. You don't get that perspective and worldview enhancing experience if you're staying in the eating disorder vortex. So I think it's really important for people to not make assumptions on how they're going to feel in the future when you're not going to be living in the same reality, right? Through this process, you are creating a different environment, you're creating different belief systems, you're viewing yourself and the world with so much newness. And that newness absolutely understands that, yes, bodies are miraculous and so much more than their physicality, but it also understands that bodies just don't matter that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a body is a body, a toothbrush is a toothbrush. When you're recovered, it's so interesting. I think you probably agree with this. When you're recovered, in so many ways, you care so much more about your body from this place of respect,
Yeah.
but also in so many ways, you care about it so much less in
Oh my
terms of
God,
its
like, don't even
importance
think
to
about it.
physicality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
I will think about it through the lens of like, how do I need to take care of it with my body?
Yeah.
Or even things like I love what we do at the retreat where we explore all these different sensations of embodiment, and one of them is what I always bring up is like the butterflies that you get when you really like someone, or when there's
Yeah.
something exciting coming, and it's like that amazing chemical thing that your body can do to give you this wonderful endorphin fueled feeling. Like, how amazing. But in terms of its external form, like just the desire to interact with that is just it's not something you're avoiding. The drive is just gone. I think it's very hard to
Exactly.
imagine when you're stuck in that
For
compulsion.
sure. It's so tricky to imagine, but I think with all these fears, like know that to listen to any of them, right? And to then let that either take you off course or like pause your recovery or just get really stagnant. That is living a life of fear, as opposed to just even trying to gauge with, what if this fear actually isn't valid? Like, what if this life that I'm moving towards, this is not going to be something that is actually dictating my everyday? Because I'm going to say someone is not fully recovered if they're still in absolute complete despair because they are hating their body every single day.
Yeah. And I think it's also about the expectation management of what this is going to be like.
Yeah.
Because I think that when we use terms like body neutrality, etc., unless you go and dive into that philosophy and realize like it's a whole spectrum of body experiences and body feelings that don't, like, distress isn't one of them. But yeah, there's going to be times where you're tolerating your body because it's a bad body image day, or because it is not
Yeah.
full season in terms of illness or whatever. Or maybe as you're going through the aging process, I know people who are starting to have some of those questions about like, what does that mean for them now that we're getting older? And it makes me so grateful every day that I went through this work at 25 and was like, I can see all the wrinkles and I can see all the change, and it just doesn't have the impact that I would have anticipated it would. So even that, right? Like, I mean, I'm 37, and I don't look like I did when I was 25 and went through recovery. Thank goodness, because that means I'm still here. What a gift! But I think it is what we were saying before. It is very, very hard to imagine that what that's going to feel like when you have been just swimming in that body preoccupation and that body distress, which goes so far beyond dissatisfaction. Like, even to just be able to tolerate your body probably feels incredibly foreign and uncertain, let alone not thinking about it very much. Or, as I've said before, the days when you like catch yourself in the mirror and you're just wearing like gym gear and you're like, how cute do I look? Like, finger guns in the mirror. Hello, cutie pie. Like, we've got to take this outside and on tour. Like, there are those moments too, but none of them are inherent to how much am I allowed to accept myself today, or like myself today, or be around people or do the things that I want to do. It's just a gauge that you aren't that aware of or that tapped into. And it is something that I see clients experiencing, like when they have their first moment of body neutrality and they're like, man, I know what you're talking about now. And I'm like, yes, okay. Now that we know what the feeling is like, we know when we're drifting further away from it versus coming closer to it. And until you have that moment, I think it just can feel like it is an impossibility and you're the one it's not going to happen for. And that is not true. It's just people have different ways of accessing it. And also treatment, it lets people down a lot in the body image department.
Mm,
That's why I'm so passionate about it. Because
mm.
when I was going through recovery, there was nothing. There were just these promises of, we'll do it at the end. And then you get to the end and they'll be like, psych, no, we won't. We don't actually know what to do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of lived experience has informed what is now available to people with body image work, which is really important. But I think your point, which is that you're not going to know how you feel at the end of this process until you get there, which is why we have to take an attitude of expansiveness and curiosity always in
Yes.
recovery. Like, don't decide for yourself how you're going to feel. Hold
Totally.
that fear, but also be open to what if it's different. I think that that's one of the most powerful questions we can ask ourselves in recovery is like, what if it goes right? What if it actually works out?
Absolutely. And expand that beyond recovery. Like, don't make assumptions on how your life is supposed to look, right? Don't make assumptions how recovery is supposed to look. This is
It's
going to
so
be
nice to be wrong.
the
It's so
timeline of your
wrong.
life. Yeah. I mean, I think this is just, I feel like it's a theme as soon as you hit like 27. It's just a theme for the rest of your life, right? Of like, you're going to like have ideas of what your life's going to look like, and then it's going to look different. And you're going to be like, cool, this is
Right.
amazing. But
Yes.
if you are so focused on this is how it has to look, this is how my recovery has to look, and I need to get to the end, and I need to be like loving my body, like it's like you kind of don't. If that someone is in that headspace of this is how that needs to look, and this is I need to love my body, I think there is still way too much attachment to what a body means in the world, as opposed to, like you're saying, getting to that place where it's actually just neutral, because you probably still need to do a little bit of work there to decentering the importance of what this physical body is in terms of emotional value to you.
Completely. That's where I stumbled across body neutrality. I actually made a video about it. I was on a walk and then I came home because it was like, boom, this light bulb hit me where I was like, I don't want to love it. I don't want to hate it. I just don't want to think about it
Mm,
that much. Where's that? Where's that talk? Where's that information? Like, I've spent so long thinking about it. I just don't want to think about it that much. And
mm,
I think we both share in this experience. That's kind
mm.
of what happens. You just
Yeah.
think about it that much.
Yeah, like the most I feel connected and aware and loving of my body is like when I'm in an embodied state. Like when I would like literally be sitting down meditating or surfing or something and being like, I am all here. Mind, body, soul, I am present. Like this is why I care for my body, to have moments like this where I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I feel so aligned and grounded. I couldn't care what my body looks like in that moment. I wouldn't even know.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yes. We're not going to get through that many of these at this
We might,
rate, but
we
we'll
might, we
we'll
might.
see how we go. We'll see how we go. Okay, the next one is, what will I have left that I'm good at, inverted quotes, or can be accomplished at? Love this one. Go, Mill.
Well, I love that the quotes are there again because,
Yes.
like we said, I think last episode, you guys all tell on yourselves when you put the quotes around a word because I don't think you
Mm,
fully believe it. Because this idea that we're good at or accomplished at an illness
totally.
doesn't really line up. It's like, can you be good at cancer? Probably not.
Mm,
It's
mm,
not something you're responsible for. It's not inherent to who you are. It's not a skill set. It's not an accomplishment. It's not certificate. It's not a shiny thing that you awarded. It's an illness. And the irony is actually that a lot of the time when we get to the end of this process, and this was certainly an awakening for me when I started reading things like The Beauty Myth, Cannot Be Clearer. Sure, read it, but just know that Naomi Wolf has been lost to QAnon. I always have to say that in case people look her
mhm,
up and they're like,
mhm,
man, likes the QAnon lady. Where I realized that this had actually taken away from my abilities. This had taken away from my brain power. It had taken away from the things I could have been focused on, the things I could
mm,
have invested in, a better use of my time, my creativity. It was not a gain, it was a loss. It wasn't even net, like it wasn't even neutral. It was a loss of
mm,
what I could have developed in that time. And I felt totally scammed. It was a big motivator and fuel for me in recovery, was being like, I got scammed. I'm never getting scammed again. This is a really, really clever set of ways that we keep people, and this is where the diet culture influence in my eating disorder came into it. This is a way that we keep particularly women very obedient and very literally and figuratively small and distracted
mm,
and out of the things that their big, amazing, beautiful brains should be plugged into. And I just
mm,
refused to be a part of that ever again, or to fall victim
mm,
to it, and to have my self-esteem live in anybody's profit margin ever again. So
mm,
I think that if you actually look at your healthy self-value system of how you want to show up in the world and what kind of good friend you want to be, or good uh, daughter, or, you know, to the people around you, how you want to show up in a good way in your relationships, or how you want to excel in the things that feel like they are aligned with you, whether it's career wise or academically or whatever it might be. Is it actually a contributor, or is it
Mm.
a way? Do you have to sacrifice a lot to be good at something that you don't actually own? You didn't choose this thing, it chose you.
Yes. Oh, love what you're saying here, Mill. I think it's so useful even just to kind of like cancel the word good here.
Yeah.
I think when you really think about how do you want to spend your days, you know, what do you want to strive to be? What do you want to create? You know, how do you want to spend your life? You want to choose things that bring out the goodness in you,
Yeah.
right? Not always, because I think the word good here and accomplishment are so intertwined. And you're so right. Like the desire to accomplish in life should not be this ambition that is keeping you tethered to your eating disorder because you don't know what the next thing is going to be that you're going to accomplish, right? Because, like you're saying, you're not going to have the opportunity to even figure out how you want to spend your days if you are so fixated on this is the thing I have to be. I have to be good at. And that goes for this illness and it also goes for so many other things in life. When you're so focused on being good or being the best or achieving something, I think you can miss the points sometimes. Like, because everyone's going to achieve and fail at so many things in life, right? Everyone's going to suck at things, but not everyone is going to live their truth and follow their heart. And even if they suck at a million things in the world and they're not the best at anything, you can still live open heartedly and live creatively. And I think that is such a damn special way to live your life. And you don't have to be good at anything to achieve that outcome. So I think what this, you know, fear post recovery really brings up is that it is not just about like swapping something out for something else that you're going to be good at. It's
Yeah.
actually about completely turning it upside down on its head and thinking about how do you actually want to spend your life.
Yes, and I love that because it's actually something else that we do at the retreat, which is the identity of like our or identification of our values and our traits, etc. Where it's this, you know, how can we use our traits and our values for
Mm,
for eating disorder self purposes?
yes.
There's, there's clear value systems in here that eating disorder self is currently using that healthy self can use, right? Which is maybe you are somebody who at the moment sees accomplishment in a certain way, whereas what you're saying is like
Yeah.
accomplishment can doesn't have to be the shiny thing or the salary or the
Mm,
body or the title or the house or whatever, because you get it and it's as empty as you'd imagine. um, it's what's the
mm,
value system behind the actual feeling that you want to have in your life,
totally.
which is that
Totally.
get the inside right, the outside falls into place kind of mantra.
Totally.
But yeah, I like your idea of like flexing up the words and
Mm,
experience versus the thing and the being the best at. Oh, like what does that even mean? Like what
mm.
how can anyone possibly give themselves the badge of most accomplished at or best at when there's 7 billion people walking around on the planet? What a futile way to spend your time.
Mm, absolutely. I heard this I think like piece of advice kind of like quote the other day, but someone was saying um like you're not extraordinary and just saying that to
So
everyone like like everyone's kind of average and it's so fine.
I love the
Yeah.
pursuit of averageness. Like
Yeah.
to be more average. That doesn't mean you are average, like in terms of your value as a person, but I suck at so many things. I have no visual creativity. I am not somebody who, like, I sent you a photo of my paella that I cooked the other day because I cannot cook anything that takes longer than 20 minutes because my quite likely undiagnosed neurodivergence won't let me. I get too overwhelmed with all the things I have to do. And I was like, Holly, you're not going to believe it. No one else is going to
Mm,
care, but look at my paella. It
I
took
loved
like
it.
an hour and I did it, all the steps. I did all of them. And that was just like for the curiosity and create it got in my head and I just wanted to do it, right? And it wasn't the best paella in the world. And that's not my thing, but it feels good to be always developing and curious, etc., without it there having to be a finish line. Like just have the
Absolutely.
experience and eat the paella.
Yes, absolutely. Just eat, guys, eat the paella. And you can do so many things in life that bring out the goodness in you, but you don't have to be good at them.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, next one is I'll throw up for a real reason like illness and that will trigger a relapse. Well, yeah, this may happen. I think it's kind of similar to the health question in a few ways. It's fearing a scenario that could trigger relapse. And the thing is, you can't live your life in a bubble hoping that things don't happen that potentially could trigger relapse because they probably will, but that doesn't mean it has to trigger relapse. Actually being in situations that challenge the stability of your recovery can actually be the exact experiences that strengthen it. Like you need to have challenges to keep that resilience strong, to keep you robust. Just like you kind of have to stay like agile in like when you're recovered, right? You got to stay like strong and considered. And you need challenges that are going to force you to pay attention. And this could be one of them. So don't assume that something like morning sickness or a stomach bug has to trigger relapse. It could absolutely be the thing that maybe triggers even more stability in your recovery.
Yeah, it could be like these are the things we can't plan for. Like,
Yeah.
don't plan to get sick. Don't plan to
Yeah.
get a virus where you throw up. Like,
Totally. Totally.
it's not too
Let,
bad.
let, let me tell you, the time in which I think I've had like food poisoning like dramatically once since being recovered, that definitely wasn't an experience that triggered me. I'd be like, this fucking sucks.
Oh,
This is the worst thing ever.
I had the same experience. That's why I wanted to include this because I think this is probably one of those unspoken things that people don't talk about. And I'm really proud of the person who sent it through because
Yeah.
this is something that comes up in sessions and people are maybe reluctant to ask it because it is, a very specific behavior. And this was certainly part of my behavioral profile that I was worried about. But I actually, in the years after I was like solidly in recovery and then during the period where I was like early, fully recovered, this would happen and I would have the same experience as you. I would be like, this is even worse because I went through an eating disorder.
Totally.
This is triggering in the opposite direction. Like this is taking me
Mm.
back to how awful this was and how did I do this all the time in a way that was intentional? Because I would actually get quite panicked knowing that that might happen and just not wanting to have that physical sensation because it reminded me of a time in my life that I never wanted to go back to and I never wanted to experience that again.
Mm.
So you might be surprised by what that trigger actually means and how you experience.
Yes.
And
Yes.
like you said, like you just can't live in fear. And it's, as you also quite rightly said, it's kind of like the health profile, health changes question, where if you're concerned about that, make sure that you have support, make sure that you're talking to
Yeah.
people about it, make
Yeah.
sure that you're unpacking it and processing it and being honest with yourself about how you feel about it. I think the other important thing to remember, and this is something you'll just learn through recovery, there is no behavior, no action, no food, no nothing that is powerful enough to make you do anything, right? It's kind of like when
Yes.
people really believe that there is a food that is powerful enough to make them use a behavior. And what we teach them is that it's not the food that is powerful, it's the compulsion and it's the coping uh, mechanism and the desire for that maladaptive coping mechanism, that is the thing that we're breaking, that nexus. You will still have access to those foods that at one time felt so powerful that they make you use a behavior, and you won't have the same feelings about them because the thing that
Mm.
we've altered is your belief that this is going to help, it's going to make you feel better. You
Mm.
now have to
Mhm.
you now accept fundamentally it will not make you feel better and that there are other ways to make you feel better that are
Mm.
effective and sustainable. It's the same thing here. Purging, throwing up, intentionally because you're ill, whatever, that action is not strong enough to just go, oh, boom, genetic marker is triggered again, and now we're right back at the start. You're giving it too much power. But
Absolutely.
most importantly, it is potentially going to be the thing where you go, oh, that's how recovered I am, that can happen. And I can go, I just feel rubbish and terrible and I want to feel better. And that's about the end of it.
Exactly. Exactly. It is. This actually comes up. I feel like for everyone, sooner or later, if that is something that's been their behavioral profile.
Yes, totally. This one also very common and comes up a lot, which is that people will expect me to be fine and won't be able to see my suffering.
If you're struggling, as we all do from time to time, it's your responsibility to learn how to express your pain and your needs and your emotions in ways that are not maladaptive, right? And in ways that do not mean you have to live with an illness to get your emotional needs met. Everyone has a voice, and it is a lesson of life to learn how to use it. No one expects you to be fine all the time, but suffering is often invisible until spoken, but it does not have to come in the form of harmful behaviors to be understood or valid. I think this is such a real, super scary fear for so many people. I particularly see it showing up in clients who developed an eating disorder, and a key part of that eating disorder was that it became a means of expressing their needs or pain. So therefore, because that was in that place, they didn't learn those skills to be able to express themselves in a healthy way. But engaging in behaviors for so many people, it becomes a way to receive care, but it's not sustainable and it's not a healthy way to get your needs met. I think so here, to really challenge this fear, I would say to this person, it's really important to bring in some more awareness that this fear is rooted probably in a former understanding of how emotional needs are met, and that can be incredibly challenging and limiting to someone's, because meeting your own basic needs, right, of like feeling like there is care around you, I can speak up for myself, it's fundamental to well-being. So this is a really important thing for people to unpack, and I probably see it coming up, I would say, in like 50% of clients.
It's why, Carolyn has, I think it says key 7, help seeking, and not
Yes.
until you get into the work, you might think, oh, I wonder how frequent that. It's so frequent that people struggle with help seeking. So unbelievably frequent. I can certainly speak to that as a personal experience in some of the work I had to do. And I think also speaks to like this whole person healing that we're doing, and the philosophy that we certainly have at Beyond Body, which is we're not just getting people well, we're teaching them how to stay well long term. And that's not just from their eating disorder, like trying to save themselves from their eating disorder. It's trying to stay as well as possible in every facet as a whole person in the long term. And something that you said is my key takeaway from this as well, which is that suffering is not known until it is expressed. Because as much as you might think that people can see your suffering, they're seeing a magic trick. They're seeing a specific expression of your suffering, which doesn't communicate the real suffering, which is over here, right? You're having conversations about food and body and weights and interactions that are tense and horrible and disconnect you. Like that's really what they're talking to you about. They're not talking to you about that core part of you that feels abandoned or feels afraid or sad or grief stricken or whatever it might be. Like that isn't something they can see because they're distracted by what the eating disorder is showing them.
Yes.
And that is your suffering, and it isn't. It's a total diversion. So in terms of that bridge building between your actual suffering and how you express that and communicate it effectively, that's a kind of scene that is beautiful and so important and doesn't compare to somebody seeing your eating disorder's manifestation of suffering. Once you actually can be vulnerable with somebody and speak in real time about what you're feeling and what you're going through, and you feel seen in that moment, like you realize that the alternative is just empty and horrible and never enough, because it's never actually getting to the core problem. And that, I think, is a huge part of why, and this is a function of your eating disorder, why they continue to deteriorate. Because you're like, why can't people still really see what's going on? Okay, then next level, next level, next level. And they're never going to. You are still just going to be having the same eating disorder based suffering conversations and feeling totally invisible and unseen in all of these ways that would actually be healing.
Oh, I think it's so beautiful what you're saying there. And I think a lot of people are going to be listening to this going, shit, okay, this thing that I thought was helping me express my needs is actually the thing that is stopping me from having my needs, my actual genuine needs, to be understood and seen, met. Because if someone is, just so down the eating disorder rabbit hole, they may not even be aware of what those needs are that actually need to be met, what the actual core suffering is, what is the healing that actually has to happen. Because it's so easy to live in blind reaction, right? And whether that's eating disorder behaviors or whether it's unconscious reactivity or whether it's like lashing out at someone or shutting down, whatever it is, right? We have to be online in our lives to really understand, why am I responding in this way? And part of it is about, being a detective of your own mind, but part of it is also about being compassionate enough with yourself to ask the hard questions. Why am I showing up in this way? What do I need? Why is these behaviors hanging around? How am I not meeting my own needs first? And for you need to tell someone your needs if you expect them to be met. I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned post recovery, that you can't assume that people know what your needs are. No. You cannot. And that's when relationships can get just cause so much like toxic repeated behavior.
You lose them.
Yeah, and you can absolutely lose them.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so then it's like those people who you need help from, because they're getting a totally different signal to what you actually probably want to send out. That's actually putting your support system at risk, right? I think we can be a good example of this, because as we make very clear to clients, coaching is not a replacement for a higher level of care. We have a very different role to dietitians and psychologists, etc., who can kind of, well, even they at a certain point cannot be a safety net that a higher level of need. But we are the first ones to be like, it is not appropriate for us to necessarily be involved in this person's care, because we're doing the stuff with them. We can see the metrics of change and how possible that is. And if it's not possible, that's a really solid red flag of like, this person needs a lot more support just overall. But what I say to clients when they're like, but Mia, if I get better, then my support's going to go away. And I say to them, but if your eating disorder continues to permeate to the point where you need a high level of care, I'm not going to be able to work with you at this stage, like temporarily. So that's an immediate challenge to eating disorders belief of, I have to stay or get worse, stay sick or get worse in order to qualify for people's help and care. I think that we can be like a symbol of how untrue that is, because if they are unable, if they disappear into their eating disorder and we're not able to access them in the way that our work requires, then we can't be of help to them, right, at that moment. But I think also, as you say, it's not fair to other people to kind of give them this riddle of asking for help and
totally
and being like, you figure it out. And it's like, well, they don't know. People just don't know about eating disorders. And that's not actually fully participating in our relationships in a fair way. Conversations with friends who I lost and reunited with through my recovery, and I was apologetic to them because my expectations of them with what I was communicating was totally unfair, totally unaligned. I was speaking different languages, and I was like, why can't you understand me? Why aren't you helping me? But I knew that we were speaking different languages. I knew I wasn't really going on.
This is a really, really important one. It also highlights the importance of being able to develop relationships where you can be honest, you feel safe to be able to be honest, you feel like that information is going to be received, and you can also receive the hard information. I had this experience, which is different, but it's absolutely relevant to this situation. Like, years and years post recovered, where I was in a situation with someone who I have a tricky relationship with, and had a bit of an argument with them, and a really good friend of mine pointed out to me, which was so hard to hear. She was like, I think you antagonize them, and I think it might come from a wounded place. And I was like, whoa, that was so hard to hear. And I feel so seen. And that is so spot on. Yes. Right. So in that moment, when I was like having this discussion with someone and I would have poked the bear, like been antagonizing, in that moment, because I was stuck in blind reaction, was not aware that this is actually probably coming from a wounded place, right? So then you apply that to someone who's, in their eating disorder. They may not even be aware of the wound that is there, and they are just like acting, reacting. And it's such a disservice to yourself and the relationships around you. So yeah, it just highlights there is so much powerful work that recovery is going to offer you that are going to support who you are as a well-rounded person after this experience.
Completely. I mean, even just this week, I had some legal stuff that's a headache, and it's just like it's something that's always in the background, and then I'll get it and it just like spikes my stress. And so Josie got 3 very, very upset voice notes. And the first thing she said at the start of her voice note back was like, I'm so proud of you. You never would have done this years ago. Like your time processing has improved so much. And she's the same. So it's something we've worked on together, is reaching out in real time. And that's still scary, but it's the evidence I have is that it's so much better. It's so much better to be brave and to be vulnerable and to just speak to what's really going on versus what I used to do, which is go away and try to fix it myself. And then Josie would be hurt because she'd be like, where have you been? And I'd be like, I'm just crawling out of a dumpster fire and now I'm going to come and tell you all about it. And she's like, dumpster fires aren't a problem. You disappearing and trying to work on it by yourself, that's the problem. So that's what I mean. Like we don't give people enough credit. We don't give people enough grace as far as let people fully participate in the relationship with you. And unless you are being honest about what is going on, you are not allowing people to fully participate and show up.
Absolutely. So well said. I'm so glad that someone sent this in.
Me too.
It's so important to talk about. So we also have some hopes for after recovery to finish on. I mean, it's always a light note, but even lighter note, right? Yeah. The first one, someone has said to have more brain space and to care about other things. I'd say absolutely. And also just to add to this, like how pleasant it is to spend your days thinking about things that aren't so boring, because food and calories are so boring. Body comparison is so boring. Planning exercise is so boring.
Sometimes exercise is so boring. And I'll get 10 minutes into it and be like, I'm going home. I'm so bored.
I'm over this.
It's not what I want to be doing. Absolutely. I mean, as you get further away from an eating disorder, I think that you can really, as much as I remember the details of it, like I don't live in it anymore, even when I remember things, but there are a couple of things that I remember viscerally, and this is one of them, like just the monotonous, boring repetition of the same thoughts all the time. And oh, that gives me like a nauseated feeling thinking about spending my days like that. And yeah, just being able to have peace in your mind and to be able to have like a rhythm in your head that doesn't feel like you're just being dragged around at breakneck speed all the time.
And honestly, I am saying this because I've just had been surrounded by some people the last few days, and I've just had such special, insightful conversations about the world and our place in it and everything that's happening. And obviously the world is incredibly doom and gloom at the moment, but also being able to have these comprehensive conversations about it and what it all means. And it's such a, for me personally, and I'm sure you would agree, like it's such a part of that connects me to being alive and to just general humanness and humanity. The idea of not being able to have space for those kind of conversations, or even like conversations like this, because I'm literally thinking about what feeling I'm going to have on my sandwich in 3 days' time from now, is like devastating to me. That is so potentially heartbreaking.
Yes, being at like a wine with your girlfriend and you're like, do you know, I would be so overthinking that I felt like I had eyes in the back of my head, and I would be like watching everyone in the restaurant and how they like at me like I would look like an idiot, or, you know, was I making a fool of myself just by sitting there and like lifting a glass up and talking like I must look like the biggest idiot on the planet. Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. So much better to be at the other side of that. Keep going, everyone. I love this one because it's a little bit of a homage to you and something I have certainly witnessed and am working on all the time with my paella. That I will be able to find joy in cooking like Hole does.
So cute. So cute, whoever said that. Love their own nickname basis. Yeah, because, you know, not everyone is going to have this love for cooking when they're recovered. But, you know, in my own understanding of it, cooking and being in the kitchen for me, there is such a wealth of experience of healing that can be offered just with a mixing bowl and a wooden spoon and a scandalous amount of butter. And that's not going to be everyone's, you know, bread and butter. It's the weirdest sentence I've ever said in my entire life.
It works.
But it's such another gift that recovery has offered me.
Yes, it's a beautiful thing to witness, and to be able to witness you demonstrating that and passing that on to other people. Like we had somebody who was like an expert gyoza dumpling maker who discovered their incredible skill at this thing. And you can just see like the switch of like, that was one of the probably more intimidating things for that person to do. And then to see them like with that pride of like, oh my God, there's this skill I just learned I could do. Who cares if it's food? Here's just this cool thing
Yeah.
you can do.
Totally. And just being able to show up for themselves in that situation. Because, you know, the kitchen can be so overwhelming for so many people.
Yes.
So really for that to be just as such a foundational part of how I care for myself and others, yeah, super special.
Love it.
The last hope we have here, and we will do another episode like this because we just have so many amazing
Absolutely.
ones, is allowing myself to meet all of my basic needs without fear, anxiety, or guilt. What do you think, Mel?
I think this is it. Like, this is the core,
Totally.
right? This is what
Yeah.
we talk about whole person healing. We do not just teach people to not use behaviors or just get through their fear foods. It is then what was sitting underneath the function of why we utilized those tools to be able to do exactly this. And
Oh, yes.
pay attention to the evidence that that did not work. Let's go and get some evidence of what does work. And your brain can't then forget that. Like, these are things that you just know to be true. I often talk about the first time I tried to use a behavior when I was in recovery where I was so distressed for the first time in a while. And I started planning the behavior, and immediately this voice just came into my head that said, it is not going to work. It never works. And it didn't feel very victorious. It felt very sad that night, but it was another building block of certainty that like I was moving in the right direction. And I did the messy middle where I didn't quite have all the skills and tools yet, but I knew this to fundamentally be true. So yeah, you're in a bit of like a crossover of like releasing the old stuff that didn't work and learning to trust the stuff that will. And then it just becomes second nature.
Totally. I agree. This is my wish for everyone on this earth, right? It's so simple, but it's so powerful. It's also just like, it's so fucked up that we're so conditioned to have these negative emotional experiences when we're literally just trying to meet our own basic needs. Like,
Yes.
come on, give a girl a break. Like, this is like bare minimum. You should be able to exceed your basic needs and like live your biggest, grandest dreams without fear, guilt, or anxiety. And I love what you're saying there. I'm the same. Like, I don't think twice about caring for myself. I'm having baths in the middle of the day. I have a scheduled me morning every week.
I love it.
It's literally just I go to a bookshop and I like read for 2 hours.
We have different modes, because do you know how I took care of myself last night? Did you ever play Nintendo as a kid? Were you in that era?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I bought myself the old
Oh, oh my God, that's so
with the
cool.
great controllers.
Oh, wow. My sister
Yeah.
would love this.
Right.
That's very
And
cool.
I got a mushroom and olive and cheese pizza. And I put my feet up and I put something stupid on. I've got
Oh
two
my God.
televisions. My mum walked in. She was like, "Does a man live here?" I was like, "Never." I've got my two TVs because the TV that's in my house sucks. So I use that for the video game. And then my TV that I brought with me is here. And I was like, this is self-care. This is my version of self-care.
Fantastic. I
Ollie's
love
meditating
that.
and I'm playing video games like with
Pew.
my feet up and like a piece of pizza in my mouth.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's fantastic. And right, as simple as these things are, it's kind of the point. This is literally the point of life.
Yes, 100%. This was so phenomenal. Thank you for making this suggestion, because it's a brilliant one. And I think this is going to be at least a two-parter. And we actually also are planning we don't do guests very often, but we've got a very cool guest episode in the works. And yeah, just absolutely love doing this with you, Whole. Thank you for joining me on your Friday morning.
Thank you. This has been a great ep. I've said that for the last 3 eps, but I really think it has been.
Roll. All right, everybody. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care. And as always, let us know how you're going in the comments. Any questions, any recommendations, we love to hear them.
Bye.
Thanks, love.